welcome to our next podcast on the Scale Community Technology and Innovation within Healthcare series. I am pleased to be joined this morning by Kyle Frye, CEO of Cortex AI. Cortex focuses on cutting-edge AI solutions for brain care and beyond, but lots more to come on that. And so, Kyle, welcome. And I guess let's begin maybe with a company overview. I noticed that the company was originally founded in 2001, and I'm sure there's been quite a journey and evolution from where you began in 2001 to where you are today. And so maybe just a quick orientation to that journey would be a good place for us to begin.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. Yeah, it's great to have the opportunity to connect with you and of course, connect with the Scale membership and community. So we're happy to be part and jumping in and participating in this podcast with you. So, Cortex AI. It's it's quite the organization. It's had many evolutions as many companies do go through. But Cortex AI, started 20 years ago, really driven by neurology and neurologists saying, "Hey, I really need to have more information when I'm working with the radiology community than just, black and white images that are giving, an subjective feedback. I really need to have objective feedback. And, I really would like to have some numbers that correlate to what's going on within a patient's brain, whether that's from a car accident, whether that's from, saying I have headaches. Is there something that's there from a neurological side? That's someone that has potential early onset dementia. That's someone that has more higher level neurological disorders and all the way through those oncology pieces. And so it started off there with NeuroQuant being established, really coming out of some research funding and grants to really be a tool for neurology. And over time, the company has evolved to offer, NeuroQuant, which is our, baseline product that looks at basically 58 different parts of the brain and can quantify those and really give you value in what you're seeing. And the biggest one really, being the hippocampal volume. That becomes a big piece. It's now evolved into our NeuroQuant MS product solution. It's really looking at lesions and being able to segment lesions, all while being able to track longitudinally. And that's another big thing was, being able to track a patient over time and to see how they're doing. And so this has, been now, the evolution where it was in hospitals, then it's really come into the forefront of imaging centers as many patients from neurologists get referred to imaging centers, this being something that's a big part of that. It's, to help in the workflow. And then it's evolved into, bringing in a brain tumor product, bringing in the ability to, segment Alzheimer's patients that are on drug therapies and to be able to look at those microimages. It's evolved into having a CT product, and it's evolved into now utilizing patented technology that Cortex has exclusivity to, RSI technology, which is restrictive spectrum imaging that allows not only to look at oncology within, say, the brain, but as well as within prostate and other body parts. So we have a regulatory approved product for prostate. The journey started with neurology and radiology connecting, and that's really now built into full scale, where as a company, we're in over 300 plus institutions within the world, with a lot of the focus being here in the US. Almost 2,000 locations have access to our technology, and we're bridging the gap not only in the neurology side, but as well as the oncology side with our OnQ prostate and our NeuroQuant brain tumor products. So it's been the journey, quite a journey. We've gone through some fundraising rounds, along the way, and are at a peak of our company now where we're seeing almost 350,000, reports and exams done a year with us and growing. And so it's a really exciting time to be part of Cortex and what we're doing. We're continuing to innovate we have a really good market brand awareness with the NeuroQuant name. And now we're really building out to showcase our entire portfolio. But this all started really driven in the neurology side, saying we need more information. And that's really how we've taken this core and our mission to really, put the patient first and to really drive innovation, increase the ability to have better patient care. And that's what our products aim to do, as our vision is to not only be the leader in neurology AI, but as well as oncology AI as well. And so we're now added the AI, the machine learning, the deep learning capabilities that really help us stand out, not only in our market, but as a whole within the medical device software world.
So it sounds like at its core, what you do is you take images and you move beyond the visual to apply a numerical scoring to those images, almost like a blood test where we're, in layman's terms, we're used to getting blood results with a score, a numerical score, translating your blood content into an output. Is that right in terms of what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great analogy comparison there. I think the other level of that is we're providing numerics, we're providing visuals as well. So we're bringing the patient into what we do. So the neurologist or referring providers, if it's a urologist and prostate, we're bringing that in to where they can actually show and go over that report with the patient. And then as well as giving them the ability to aid in their diagnosis or aid in their decision making at a much faster pace. And as well as to quickly look back, because you can see that, 6 months ago, you were here by way of standard deviation and what would be considered normal and maybe not. And then now maybe you've improved or you have, it's gotten a little bit worse. And that could be because of drug therapy. It could be because of, something that has happened, and you can kind of track that over time. I think one of the pieces in our journey is we're really about creating more value, allowing to have better outcomes for the patients and for the referring providers to be able to provide that better care, and to do it in a quicker manner, right? Not having to take as long to read and look at an exam, or not knowing what having to have the prior and the current side by side and looking, versus now you can actually quickly go from one to the next because it's plotted there. To now we have reimbursement around what we do as well. So not only are we providing better patient care, one of the wonderful pieces that we have now is also reimbursement. So we have those CPT codes that come into play. So it really becomes very advantageous all around to bring our product in there. But to kind of tie it back to your piece on the blood sample and giving that information at a higher level, definitely there's a lot of correlation there, to where we do believe that NeuroQuant and our fleet of products should be used anytime a brain is scanned. And we believe the same way anytime a prostate is scanned, that you should be utilizing our technology. We're not adding time, we're not taking away any value, we're adding more value, not only just for the patient, but the referring provider and the radiology team as whole, and then as well as downstream with the care pathway team, whether that's neurosurgery, radiation oncology, and the follow-up post that. So we're really now intertwined in the day-to-day utilization and scanning that we should be, and that's our goal, is to not stop until we are used in every single MRI scan that we possibly can be with our products.
Why begin with neurology? You mentioned, prostate. I'm sure you could list other examples where it could be applied, but give us a sense for that market, why that market, and what is the sort of size and culture of that market that had you begin there first?
Yeah, so it really started out of our founder, Anders Dale, he's a medical physicist focused on the neuro piece. So really out of his expertise is really what started this, and then had a conversation, with a prominent neurologist at UC San Diego, that the team that Anders Dale worked on. And he said, I'm really struggling here. And Anders said, well, I can create that. I can do that. I think I have a way to be able to create it. And then from there, that lifted it up. It was really an unmet need in the market. And I think, as many things do, it's you you see what's out there. Maybe you didn't know that it would be a big value add, but once you get into it, you're like, wow, this is really can change the landscape of how imaging and data is transferred and looked at. And so it's certainly evolved, but it really started from our founder and then, a prominent neurologist at UC San Diego, Jen Brewer, who was also part of the founding group of our organization. So kind of asked about the neuro side. If you look at it's very complex, right? So if you're scanning MSK, it's very easy, right? You're scanning the knee, you're looking, there's some difficulties within MSK, but for the most part, to look at a ligament or to look at different pieces, MSK is probably the most prominent imaged, body arena. But when you get into the brain, it's very complex. It is the core of the functionality and who we are as humans. And when you get into MRI scanning, it's about 30% of the scans that are done worldwide. It's a big market. And then within there's so many other subset markets within the neuroimaging landscape. You have people that have MS, Alzheimer's, that need to be scanned multiple times throughout a year to make sure their drug therapies are working. You have, people that are getting scanned for, car accidents, concussions, athletes. You have that, I have some, extreme headaches. Those can all be initial indicators to much more troubling neurology type of, disease states, and then as well as can filter into the spine and other areas. So it's a very prominently scanned area, and it's growing. So if you look at MRI scanning, it's the CAGR that continues to grow. MRI scanning does not go down, it goes up. And more than anything, it's a global pandemic of lack of access to good imaging. So I think we're fortunate here in the US to have, really good imaging capabilities, but you still have people that are waiting 6-8 weeks to be scanned. So, our software really helps in speeding up the ability for radiologists to look at more, get information for your knowledge to help they make better decisions on how they want to treat a patient. So neuro is a big part of the imaging world.
The ability to turn a visual, at least you mentioned MSK, sounds like it's a bit more binary in these visuals. And so this sounds like it's more of a gradient in neurology, which makes the numbers even more powerful. So the ability to add that numerical lens to the visual seems quite powerful. We deal with different types of technology solutions. Some add new services, some create automation or replace existing workflows. This really sounds like it adds to an existing process. It's not looking to replace the MRI. It sounds like it comes on the back end of the MRI. So can you give us a flavor for, frankly, the barriers to adoption? Because I'm not hearing too many reasons why you wouldn't want a numerical perspective, assuming that numerical perspective is reliable. So what does the implementation process feel like? What does the workflow change feel like? And what are the barriers for more people saying yes to this technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would absolutely agree with you that the barrier to entry, I think, is more of just not knowing that this is out there and the value that it can bring. And that's why I'm excited to be here to share the message and to share that here. It's very easy to adopt. So whether you own imaging equipment or you don't, you have the ability to utilize this technology with your patients, and it is very easy to set up. We offer the ability to be used within the cloud, and it works within your current PACS system environment. We have structured DICOM capabilities that allow the utilization from radiology when they're utilizing their dictation to flow right into the patient chart. It's really, really easy to use and even easier to set up. Once, you've identified that you want to be able to partner with us, it's as little as a day that we're set up and you can be going and using. So it's setting up the right protocol within the scanner, which you're doing that protocol anyways, and it's identifying that protocol, and then as simple as scanning and then sending the data and having the data come back. It's very, very simple to begin utilizing us in your current environment. And if you're a referring provider, it's easy to be able to also be a customer of ours to get that data to flow back into what you would like to see as well. So, as quickly as you would want to get set up, we can get you set up. And that's the beauty of our technology, because it's software, doesn't require any, tangible pieces. It doesn't require any sort of like real true hardware pieces because we're doing this in the cloud. So it's a really, really easy way to get up and going.
Let's jump into the product itself, and I want to share my screen here. I picked an example report from your website, and it looks like this is focused on dementia. So give us a quick orientation. What are we looking at? What is unique in this report that we wouldn't be able to get without the Cortex technology?
Yeah, I think this is a great example of not only what a patient could see and expect, but as well as a referring provider. In a normal routine, you would have a radiologist look at black and white images. They would run a certain protocol. They would have the images to be able to look at, and then they would dictate and give some of these pieces, right? They would, look to see about the hippocampus. They would look to see about the ventricles, whether the ventricles are enlarging or decreasing. And those are all different indications that there's maybe something happening within the brain. But the unique piece that we bring is two things. One is we have the largest database of normative, meaning these are, we've run patients from 3 to 100. We have the largest database that's looking at this patient population and has normals that are there. So if you're outside that normal percentage, it'll give you a percentage, normative based on normal scans that have happened within that age group. Then that allows that to be an indicator or score or a numeric value that is written down that'll give you ability to understand what may be happening. So this is what we would call a neuroquant, dementia report, but it's really looking at the volumetry, so volumes within the brain. So these volumes are going to give you indications and be able to aid in that diagnosis of a patient or to give a now baseline of that patient with this piece. So hippocampal volume and looking at the cortex are two very, very difficult items to do just by looking at black and white images, really to have this called out and color coded to look at. And when you see kind of around the perimeter of the brain, there you can see on the third picture, you can see the ventricles kind of looks like a butterfly. And then you can see around the white and gray matter and looking at the intracranial volume within that. And so that's a big piece for neurologists and what they look at, and as well as neuroradiologists. So from a patient side, they're going to be more or less, when talking with their provider, they're going to be more or less, looking at the picture and more or less listening to the provider talk about where their brain sits relative to the largest normative database in the world. And that's what we bring to the table on this particular report. But I would point out is we have, many different reports that can be pulled with running the same sort of brain sequence protocol on an MRI scanner. So for the patient, they don't need to be on the scanner any longer than what they would normally be, but they can expect to get additional data that will be helpful when they're sitting down and connecting with their neurologist or referring provider, whoever that might be.
So it sounds like that normative database is a big part of the value add and allows you to get to this output of making comparisons. How did you go about building the normative database? How reliable is that database? And do you get pushback from providers who say that, it's not as simple as looking at a number on a piece of paper relative to a normative percentile?
Yeah, I think it's all about the continuum of care, right? I mean, how are you providing value that's increasing the ability to make the right diagnosis quicker, more efficiently, without having to go get additional scanning or higher level scanning that's not needed? Patients don't want to be in that small bore having anything scanned. And how do we help, make that process easier? And we do that. The other piece is we have IP around our, there's much more scientific pieces that goes into it than just, hey, here's the report, right? There's definitely, we have a, patented technology around our Atlas map and how we can quantify. We also have deep learning and machine learning. So we're constantly training the model, which is really unique to us, that we're constantly training the model and evolving this. And so in doing that, we're making things tighter, more specific, more efficient in what we're doing across all of our product lines. And so that's what you'll see. And now you're coupling, when you look at, you call it quantitative imaging, right? So quantitative is now the numbers versus qualitative imaging. And that's normally what historically you would see is qualitative imaging now is really getting merged and brought in with quantitative imaging as AI continues to develop. And so we're utilizing AI technology. Our database is global. It's not only from the US, it's from Europe, it's from Asia, it's from all over the world to really give us a really good depiction. Statistically, there's always a statistical probability. Once you reach over a certain amount, it doesn't make any statistical, gain or loss. But we continue to add to our normative curve database. We continue to train our models to be able to have that. And we're known as the gold standard in neuroquantitative imaging. We've been known as the gold standard for 10 plus years. We remain the gold standard. We're very proud of that. And we certainly push ourselves in our new evolution of products. Now we've just releasing our 5.0 version, which now brings in other layers to segment SWI images and GRE images, which are really important in the micro images. So we continue to evolve in what we're offering the market, and we take pride in maintaining that market presence as the number one global well-known brand for neuroimaging. And we've gained that by having great technology to go with it, right? So people trust us, they trust the information. But I think the most important thing is ultimately the radiologist is going to make, the call, right? We realize the value and the importance that we're the aid, we're the partner, we're the tool to be used. We're not coming in and trying at any level to tell the radiologist what something should and shouldn't be, that we're really there to bring that, side-by-side partnership and value to them.
So let's talk about outcomes, and maybe to do that, let's jump over to another case study. So and admittedly, some of this was over my head from a scientific and medical perspective, but my impression is that there was a patient who presented with some type of brain trauma, and they had various types of testing, an MRI, neuroquant technology on the back end, DTI, 2D CSI spectroscopy. And so these are the different techniques. And then there were different findings that were laid out here. And it looked very different, in terms of what you're able to glean and what next steps might be if we were sort of in this category of MRI only versus this category of adding on neuroquant, and below we list out the other two testings as well. So from a practical perspective, maybe from the lens of the patient who cares about getting the right care and getting to the right outcome, can you walk us through, what the providers, whether it's the radiologist or neurologist, might have done if we were in this paradigm, MRI only, versus how different of an outcome we might get to if we were MRI plus neuroquant?
Yep, absolutely. I think the biggest piece is when you have, let's say for an example, have had a concussion, you've been in a car accident, this particular one is looking whether or not, there was a traumatic brain injury that took place. Your number one piece is you would run a 3D T1, and, you would, also run a T2, 2D flare. And these are protocol terms, sequences that you would run within the brain. So listeners that are listening to this, that have that MRI radiology background, this all makes sense. Those that don't, this is just, part of the equation that you would have. If a patient presents with, when they get referred, this would kind of be a normal protocol you would do. Again, you're black and white. You're not going to see any sort of subtle changes. And then visually, it may look good, right? So this was looked at and said, visually, when we look at it in black and white, this patient looks to be okay. No brain bleeds. Everything looks to seem okay. Now, when you couple it with our technology, you find that there was signs of traumatic brain injury because of the looking at all of the different parts of the brain that we can then get volumes to and look to segment out. You can look at how the ventricles of the brain compare to normal. You can now look at the thalamus, within the brain, is that, deviating from normal. And you will see that part of this, if you scroll up just a little bit to the finding, there is, it gives you the volumes there and, talks about that respectively, that would then to a radiologist. And mind you, a neurologist would say, wow, or a referring provider would say, wow, yeah, this is evident that this patient has signs of some sort of traumatic injury or traumatic atrophy within their brain. And so then would look at what would have caused this, right? Why did they come to us in the first place? And this is part of having that additional data that otherwise this patient would have been sent home, everything's fine, and then who knows what would happen down the line. Another kind of studies, you can see is, you could quickly do something with brain tumor. You can see that there's a mass. Okay, we think it's a tumor. Visually, you can see it. Well, now you add our technology and we can actually, segment that and show you actually what part of that mass actually is a tumor versus not. These are all things with the just looking black and white images, the best of the best, might be able to really, really get in there, but everyone needs that aid and that support to make sure that they get it right. And this is a prime example, and it lives within, the patient's record. It's something to go back and view. And if they scan again, with traumatic brain injuries, your brain can recover. You can go back and look and see how, 6 months from now, how's that recovery happened with, different therapeutic type of treatments.
And in terms of use cases, you mentioned, we looked at dementia, you mentioned brain tumors, you mentioned traumatic brain injury. I see here lesions. Just within the brain and neurology, what are other types of conditions or applications that we're missing?
For us, the beauty is we are, able to with our NeuroQuant MS, and our 5.0 functionality, which now looks at SWI and GRE, we're really able to look at and segment and aid with any sort of lesion. Lesion would be, an oncology type of, or, a lesion that would be causing a neurocognitive disease or disorder, excuse me. So, it could be from Parkinson's, could be from Alzheimer's, could be from, early onset, dementia, could be from MS, multiple sclerosis, and other life-altering disease states. And then as well as you get into the oncology side with brain tumor, now you have, we look at high-grade, low-grade gliomas, we have meningioma on its way. And then the tumor care pathway, we're now looking at 90% of tumors that would be out there within the MR space. So we can really look at any MR or any neurodisorder through MR. And we have, our Alzheimer's ability and our 5.0 capability as well, which is really important. And then you look at, the pet world, we have the ability to look at the transducers here in the pet environment. And we have a CT product that, is really behind the scenes, allowing for a quick side-by-side comparison of previous CT scans and as well as automatically aligning the brain when it's in a CT. So it's a big value add. Some scanners have it, some OEMs have it, but this is universal across any CT scan to be able to do it, and as well as having a great subtraction method there. So that's very unique to us and what we do. And we have IP technology within our NeuroLine CT product. And then our, brain suite, right? That's combining of NeuroQuant MS, NeuroLine CT, brain tumor, PET. That really creates our neuro suite.
I'm drawing a blank. There was a book on basically the history of studying the brain and how we've treated the brain and broader neurological conditions. And a lot of the evolution was accidental. Patients came in with conditions and people tried with best intentions to solve or treat or correct for the issue. And some of those trials worked really well. And frankly, some of those didn't. And through a bit of trial and error, I'm probably oversimplifying, but a bit of trial and error, our ability to understand the brain has improved. But you often hear that there's limits to how well we truly understand the brain. And maybe that's right or maybe that's wrong, but how has this type of technology contributed to not just treating these conditions, but truly getting to a better understanding of the brain and addressing some of those gaps that we've had historically?
Yeah, we were truly the pioneers in the quantitative imaging space. Cortex has been and will continue to lead in the innovative world that we live in, but we were truly pioneers in doing that. And this was a very strategic, what they need driven. But as you said too, that many medical devices come about trying to solve for a need, but in many ways they didn't solve for the need they were looking at. They ended up solving for other needs, right? And, I think, the brain is the most complex, in my opinion. Statistically, I'm not sure if I'm right there, but it's the most complex, part of us. And there's so many fibers, there's so many levels and layers within the brain that, you have so many specialists within, the brain medical field that it is ever growing. And there's biomarkers that you can find by chance, or you can find by that need. And I think, we're continuing to evolve because the brain continues to evolve, and the structures continue to evolve. And we're really focusing on staying at the forefront of what we're doing to allow for our technology to be that one stop that you need when it comes to getting quantitative information. We call it post-processing for any sort of neurodegenerative disease state to help give you that. And so many times we have been used, to your point, Jason, is a patient will come in for one symptom, and that symptom led to a diagnosis of something because our technology was utilized. It led to a diagnosis that no one thought was going to be, right? And that's the power of having this technology. Is now the patients, we don't want anybody to have any sort of neurological diseases. We want everybody to live a wonderful life with no disorders in their body. But the fact of the matter is it's almost impossible to avoid. But early diagnosis can allow for better treatments and can allow for people to get back to living a much more joyous life. And that's what our technology can do. It wasn't discovered by chance, but diagnoses are happening because of our technology being utilized, whereas they would have been missed. Patients would have gotten off the MRI table, would have gone home thinking everything's okay, or maybe we don't know that everything's okay, but we don't really have an idea, and going through all of these different tests and different treatments to see, versus now they can really have a clear picture of where they're at and what they are looking at ahead of them.
It was the Tale of the Dueling Neurosurgeons was the book.
Yeah.
Good one. A good one. So with that, I recently spent time with an AI company in the imaging space, and they're focused really, and you may be familiar with them, but they're focused on creating consumer-driven full body scans using AI to allow for a full body scan that otherwise would be cumbersome to the point of perhaps impossible to do. Yeah. And the application is for really preventative scanning for the diagnosis of cancer. So do you see a pathway for using this technology for preventative treatment and diagnostics in the brain space, or are we a long way away from people thinking about getting a brain check just like they would get a blood test, back to that analogy?
Yeah, we're right there. So yeah, we partner with some of the leading groups that are doing this. The whole body scanning is, it's great from the preventative to get a whole body scan, be in a scanner for an hour. You have probably some specific technology that's in there that is valuable as you look at other parts. But the great thing is these organizations are encompassing the quantitative analysis because it doesn't take any additional time. So absolutely, we're being utilized today to where somebody comes in, they want to get a full body scan, but they also want to know how their brain's functioning, right? So in the same breath, they want to get that data. And so I see the preventative landscape increasing because we want to know what's going on and tracking it and being able to catch something before it gets too bad. But in a lot of these cases, Jason, a lot of findings are happening by utilizing this additional technology. So the whole body imaging is a great platform, but all of those should be, and many are, utilizing quantitative information like Cortex, and when they're looking at the brain or even the prostate, to be able to really give good information. If you think of a male, they're concerned about their brain, they're concerned about their heart, and they're concerned about their prostate when they're getting this whole body imaging. And obviously women, when they're getting that, they're concerned about heart, and breast, and concerned about, the body and the ovarian side, right? So there's very specific pieces that are very focused when you're doing the whole body scanning. So I definitely see this growing, and I definitely see this. I don't see the whole body scanning and the quantitative utilization as or the early preventative as a fad. I see it as something that will really remain as we go, because I do believe people are taking more and more interest in their bodies and understanding what's going on at an earlier level than coming in when you have symptoms, right? Coming in asymptomatic versus symptomatic.
Who's paying for Cortex? Is it the payers? Is it the providers? Is it the patient?
Yeah, great ask there as well. So we have CPTs, so providers. So within Medicare in the private space, we have CPT codes that correlate with our technology, specifically with us being the market leader, with us being the gold standard. We have that, which is great. And
are those CPTs that you had to create and get approved? Are they new CPT codes, or are these pre-existing?
Yeah, so we've had new increased CPT codes. So we've had 76376 and 77 were CPT codes with 3D rendering, from Medicare that can still be utilized. So utilizing post-processing, and now we look at 0866, which is really tracking longitudinally of a patient, which our technology, of course, is the pioneer in that. And then as well as, looking at, segmenting and lesions, over time, as well, because it has been looked at to say, tracking and early diagnosis and tracking, allows to, aid in the recovery, aid in the treatment. For example, it doesn't make sense to put somebody on a drug that if you scan them, you see that there has been a negative, cause, or it's not a drug that they should be on, right? They should be looked at or talked with their provider and how they need to have that adjustment. Or when you think about it, Jason, for us to be able to aid in the diagnosis of brain tumors. Now we have CPT codes and reimbursement that coincide with the diagnosis, and then as well as like post-treatment. So if you go in and use radiation to treat, or you surgically remove parts of the tumor, you now run another scan and you can see how the necrosis, has it gone away? What is it looking like? You can actually use this in planning and treatment. So, our core customer focus is in that neurology, urology space from the referring provider, and then really in that radiology and then surgical, space when we get into with our brain tumor and prostate. But our products are reimbursable, which is a wonderful piece to have. But really, we lead with the value that our products brings. Different imaging centers, outpatient centers, hospitals, they may have different models on how they do this, whether they, charge for a patient to have this additional information, whether they're reimbursing it through, the healthcare, providers. But it's a wonderful place to be able to have that reimbursement. That value is seen there with what we do.
Is there a challenge in that maybe the neurologist benefits a lot from the outcomes of having this type of report and capability, but the implementation is on the radiologist? And so is there a sort of a question of incentive alignments and interest alignments here?
I think at the end of the day, the core is about the care team and the process. And ultimately for the radiologist, they don't own the patient, right? The patient is owned by the neurologist. And the urologist, right? If a patient is found with a neurological disease, more or less treatments will happen within that facility, right? Within that hospital network, is the treatments will happen there. So from a hospital side or radiology side, they really want to get it right. They want to get the diagnosis right, and they want to make sure that the patient has that best in class experience. There's nothing worse than not knowing what's going on and having to go through tons of tests and having that uncertainty. So often, I can tell you in my own personal life, that's really come true, and dealing with, my father having, certain health, scares and going through scanning, and nobody can really provide anything at such a, pace at which we can. And I say that, Jason, is there's not a who's benefiting or not. It's at the end of the day, I think the Socratic oath is what's best for the patient is what we need to be focused on. And I do see that in medicine, that whether it's the neurologist and the radiologist working together or having that data to help it's creating a winning experience for the patient, and as well as for the hospital, because they can treat them the right way and not have to have that, going through 20 different testing models that'll cost the hospital, the insurance providers, much more money than getting it right the first time. But I do want to point out that the quantitative AI imaging space is a really, really small subset of the overall imaging market, that it's growing, but that, it's really important to go to those innovative neurologists and hospital networks that are putting quantitative at the forefront and making it that standard of care. I do believe we'll get there, that, in the next, 5 to 10 years, every patient across the world at some point, whether they're getting the brain scan, prostate, that they're going to have quantitative data following them. But many, 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 do not today. Even in our own backyard in the US, 90% of outpatient centers and hospitals are not utilizing quantitative information and how they're looking at patients. And I see that growing. And so we're at the forefront of that, but we have a lot of room to grow and to build. So there's still that education to the market and educating to, not only the radiologists, but the neurologists, not only the body radiologists, but as well as the neurologists.
So today you're deep in neuro. There's, a broad range of use cases and applications. You're also live in prostate care today, or?
We are. Yeah, prostate's very exciting. I mean, we've got 20 years of experience in the neuro space and continue to innovate, which is fantastic. And I love the journey that our neuro product suite has been on and how we're continuing to evolve. But I definitely get very excited about our brain tumor product, with us adding mets and meningiomas, which is a big piece in being able to quantify and look at that. Neuroradiologists, see a lot of those cases, and it's not the easiest to be able to look at. And then we get to prostate, where, we have patented technology. We are the only company in the world that can truly create an RSI map that you can look at. The urologist can actually see and be like, okay, I now see where this cancer is. The way to look at it now is to give a PIRAD score. It's black and white. It's circling an area. If you're a urologist and you look at it, you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at exactly, because they're not trained to do it. But much of the treatment of focal therapies or ablation methods of HIFU and different devices that are out there to treat, it's all being run by the urologist, and now they're incorporating the imaging piece into it. So we're in some major institutions today, but this is our newest product that we're introducing into the market. And we're really putting energy and effort behind it, and it's really making a difference out there. Just a quick tidbit is, I want to say almost 60% of biopsies that are done in men today are done unnecessarily.
When you think about the power of adding the numerical, I mean, that's a great example. You have an ability to reduce care that may not be necessary. So avoidable care cut down, which has benefits from a cost perspective and from a patient experience, patient care perspective, potentially. I want to go back to this normative data set that you guys have created, since that sounds so core to your ability to deliver value to your clients. Are there changes at a macro level, so thinking about US healthcare, not just this specific application, that we should be thinking about to make getting to that normative database easier?
I think there's a lot of things that are happening on a macro level from the NIH. There's a lot of studies that are happening, and the data is all public in many levels, which is really strong. I think it's about the implementation of it. I think it's the from a macro level on the healthcare side is, if it's not reimbursable, we don't want it sort of mindset, right? And the beauty is we are reimbursable, which is great, but it becomes more of a business side versus what is the best path for the patient, right? And I think that's where, from a macro level, we really need to get to is, that we're incentivizing the right treatments, and that's really should be the focus, is that the patients are getting the right treatments at the right time, and that softwares and AI that can enable that really needs to be at the forefront. I think we do a great job as a healthcare field in treating once we kind of know what a diagnosis is, but I think we struggle in following those patients after treatments, and I think we struggle in getting the right diagnosis and then treating the right pieces, right? So and I think the normal database, we have almost like 25,000 plus now in our database reach that we can utilize and pick to have. But I think we're in a good spot there. I think globally we're in a good spot. There is a focus there, and really, I think it comes down to enabling technology to thrive that adds clinical value. And there's many ways to measure that versus just the complete, can this be reimbursed or not, right? And I think you probably see that, Jason, in how you all consult or how you all work and hear from, your members out there that there might be fantastic technology, but if there's not the reimbursement, it becomes a cost to them, and they really need to measure the value there, and so
Yep.
it's really been driven by the CPT reimbursement world, right?
I'm gonna squeeze in one more question, and it's a question that
Please.
we could probably spend another hour on. So it's a bit unfair of me to do that with 3 minutes remaining here. But
Sure.
global. So you're in 36 countries today. You mentioned global a minute ago, and we're very interested in this idea of best practice cross-pollination. So today we can think about that in the provider market. How do we move best practice from one neurology group to another? How do we move best practice from neurology to orthopedics? How do we move best practice from the MSO market to the hospital market? But we think there's an opportunity to move best practice globally, which is obviously a loaded topic, and the reimbursement models are different in different countries, but you guys have done it. And so I'm just curious, at its core, at its most simplistic form, taking imaging and adding numerical scoring sounds very translatable. What's been your experience? Where are you selling, and how much of a focus is it, and what's the experience been?
Yeah, I think from a global side, I'm a big believer that the globe deserves the best. Humankind, everyone deserves to have the best technology at their fingertips. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's not always the case. Outside of the US, right? And in the US, we have, the ability to have fantastic technology, and the adoption, although in medical compared to other pieces, it takes longer for adoption periods to happen, which is an unfortunate part, but we're fortunate to have, healthcare system in the US where adoption of new technology is praised and is looked at and is something that is hands are out there to grab that. So when we look at it, a majority of our business is US focused, but since I've been in the seat here a little bit less than a year, I've really focused on trying to grow our global, business. And a lot of that comes to, like you said, reimbursement's different in different countries. And so a lot of it comes into the value. It just comes into the workflow, making things easier for their providers, easier for the patients. And the value is driven through better patient care and through better efficacy and specificity. But it's a journey there. It's a journey there when you get into the AI quantitative space for any of the body parts. It's a journey. So we're really starting to make a focus of that now. We're seeing some early signs there, but it's really coming from those early adopters and more of those patient care-centric areas. I'll give you an example. Like France has a 8 to 12 week lead time just to go get a routine brain scan for MRI. Adding in technology like us will allow radiologists to read quicker. There is no really mandate for radiologists in Europe to read within a certain period of time. And so but the backlog pushes them that they need to read more so that more patients can get in to be scanned, and not having repeat people being scanned because you didn't get a diagnosis right, or you felt like you didn't have enough information, to diagnose. So we're seeing where it's workflow, it's patient enhancement, it's removing some of those barriers to be scanned, where we see our products jumping in there. But it's definitely, like you said, we could talk for an hours on this. US has been our focus point, and we've driven a ginormous amount of success within the US, and we are looking to carry that into Europe, into Japan, into Korea, where we're currently at, and Latin America is starting to come around as well. But a lot of this, Jason, is at the very beginning of what you said happens with that reimbursement. And so in other parts of the world, the reimbursements are set, and it's it's trying to fit different pieces in to be part of that entire package. So
tantalizing but complicated opportunity. I guess what else is new in healthcare?
Yeah, right. It's a little bit of a tale as old as time, but I do believe, by being software driven, you remove a lot of the, having the devices that you got to build, you remove shelf life, you remove so much. So I do believe software as an enabler really becomes the future in the medical space and becomes a real value add to the medical scope as a whole, with the patient at the forefront, right? We really got to do what we do, putting the patient at the forefront. And if we're doing that and we're in that software space, which we are, I really believe we're at the forefront of what the future of medicine looks like.
I really want to thank you. I mean, I think firstly, congratulations on building what you have to date. And I think the conversation is so interesting, not just because of what you do, but also because of what you represent. And so we really could spend hours here, whether it's talking about global or talking about other applications for the concept of what you built. But it's certainly fascinating to learn a bit this morning. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Want to tell you, we're very appreciative to have the opportunity. Appreciate you taking such an interest in this as well. And I think it shows what you're doing and your mantra to stay at the forefront and to bring a unique perspective and opportunities out here. So I want to thank you for the opportunity and look forward to continuing the dialogue, talking with your members and the Scale community, and hopefully this conversation has some impact out there.
Very good. We look forward to all the above. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.